I'm Suzanne from suzanneharrison.co. Welcome to my YouTube channel. Today we're going to talk about Draconic Astrology. Now, if you've not heard of Draconic Astrology before, strap in because it's a pretty interesting form of astrology. We're going to start with looking at the background and the roots of Draconic Astrology, where it came from. We're then going to talk about how it relates to the tropical zodiac, how the two work together. Then I'm going to step you through how to create your draconic chart and then how to do a chart analysis. Okay, so if it's a good idea at this stage to grab your regular natal chart, your tropical chart, yeah, let's get going. So I've titled this presentation The Final Piece of the Puzzle because for me, when I had my Draconic Astrology chart done, it literally was the final piece of the puzzle for me. So I hope the same type of revelation happens for you. So what is Draconic Astrology? It's also known as nodal astrology, and it points to a person's life or soul purpose. Now, a little bit of background on Draconic Astrology. It has its origins in the ancient city of Babylon, which is the center of Mesopotamian civilization. It didn't rise in the modern astrological mind, though, until the 1950s. And it really wasn't until 1987 when Pam Crane, the Reverend Pam Crane, first published her book Draconic Astrology that it became a well-known topic. Now, I have an updated version of Reverend Pam Crane's book. You can see the cover of it there on the screen. It's called The Draconic Chart. It was published in 2019 and it's available on Amazon if you want to go and grab yourself a copy. And I have used it along with an introduction to Draconic Astrology by Victor Oliver, a very well-known UK astrologer who specialises in draconic readings, as well as a personalised reading I had with Victor Oliver. I used all of those tools, all that information as the basis for my own work on Draconic Astrology and also for the information that I'm putting into this presentation for you guys today. So let's have a look at, let's have a look at the tropical and draconic zodiac, what they are and what they mean. Now, without getting too technical, the tropical zodiac gives us our 12 astrological or sun signs, neatly divided into 30 degrees each. The tropical zodiac begins when the sun crosses the celestial equator at 0 degrees Aries and continues in 30-degree chunks through the other signs, following the sun's apparent path through the sky. Now, this apparent path through the sky is called the ecliptic, and it becomes important down the track. So store that one away. Now, while the sun is the key player in the tropical zodiac, the moon is the key player in the draconic zodiac. And while the tropical zodiac resets each year when the sun goes to 0 degrees Aries, Draconic Astrology places the north node of the moon at 0 degrees Aries. Now, that may sound a little odd. And if you're interested in all the background associated with that, then dive into Victor Oliver's book or even Pam Crane's book, or you can probably find some other references online. But you don't have to wait for the transiting nodes to move back to North Node Aries. This is all done from the basis of your own birth chart. Okay, so let's move on to a sort of more of a side-by-side comparison of the tropical and the draconic zodiac. Now, the tropical zodiac, or what you would know as your regular birth chart, it represents our ego selves, personalities, behaviors, and where and how we live our lives. I know that it can represent a whole lot more than that, but this is just a very basic comparison that I'm doing here just to make the point. A draconic chart is the chart of your soul. So I like to call the tropical chart your earth chart, and I like to call your draconic chart your soul chart. So it's a chart that represents it is more representative of your soul and its soul's journey, as opposed to the chart of the life that you're currently living. As we know, the tropical zodiac is divided into the 12 signs that we know with 30 degrees each, whereas the draconic zodiac is created by repositioning the tropical chart's north node of the moon to 0 degrees Aries. And that's the first clue to what you're actually going to be doing in upcoming as we go through how to create and then analyze and synthesize your draconic chart. Your tropical zodiac begins when the sun crosses the Aries point, 0 degrees Aries each year. As I've already said, the draconic zodiac is created by repositioning the tropical chart's north node to 0 degrees Aries. It indicates life, soul, or purpose. And your tropical zodiac, it's important to remember that your tropical chart always comes first. You cannot interpret a draconic chart without first doing your tropical chart. The draconic chart is not an alternative to your tropical chart. It's not a new chart. You use your tropical chart as your foundation, and the draconic chart arises from it, and it is interpreted as a supplementary chart to your tropical chart. Okay, so they must be read side by side. Now, if you're not across the nodes of the moon, well, you're about to get a crash course in the nodes of the moon. I work with the nodes all the time. I find them absolutely fascinating, and they're really my main thing when it comes to astrology. So it was not much of a stretch for me to get into Draconic Astrology once I realized that it's basically nodal astrology. So let's do a quick crash course on the nodes of the moon. Now, the nodes of the moon are not bodies in the sky. So they're not like the sun, the moon, Mercury, Venus, Mars, Jupiter, Saturn, Neptune, Uranus, Pluto. They're not bodies in the sky. They are points in the sky. And this is where the ecliptic comes back. So the moon's nodes are the 2 points where the moon's orbit crosses that ecliptic, which is the sun's imaginary path around the Earth. The north node is the point where the moon moves into the northern hemisphere. The south node is the point where the moon moves into the southern hemisphere. And symbolically, the nodes of the moon are said to represent a dragon, with the north node representing the dragon's head and the south node representing the dragon's tail. Now, what do the nodes of the moon do? Now, you can ask this question of a different range of astrologers, and they're all going to tell you different things pretty much. But I'm going to stick very much down the accepted line of traditional / psychological astrology when I tell you that the south node is traditionally said to represent past lives or early experience in this life. It can indicate gifts or talents or struggles or trauma that you've brought with you, and areas and behaviors where you feel comfortable. So think of the south node as a safe home base to which you retreat when the waters of life may get too rough. The north node, however, is traditionally said to represent our destiny, our way forward. It's a place we are either drawn to or actively head towards via our life experiences. Note that just because you're drawn to it doesn't mean the path to the north node is easy. And that's a really important point to make. A lot of nodal astrologers I see, or a lot of people who don't really work a lot with the nodes but like to include them or like to talk about them, especially on social media, they will talk about south node bad in the past, north node good, head towards that for the future. It's just not that simple. They are a system. One cannot literally exist without the other. So you embrace the experiences of both, whether you're working with a tropical chart, a regular chart, it doesn't matter what sort of astrology you're working in, but certainly when you're working in draconic astrology. And the fact remains, for those who seek liberation, individuation, or self-exploration, the north node is your guiding light. And that's where draconic astrology comes in. So let's talk about how to create your draconic chart. Now, it would be a good idea to have a copy of your tropical chart with you. So if you haven't got one, pause this video and go and print one out, because it's actually good to have one in front of you. Because, I'd wager if you're watching this that you actually have a copy of your birth chart. If you don't, go to astro.com and create one. So if you do have a copy of your chart, my best bet is that you also know where your nodes are by sign and house. It's really quite simple. The draconic chart rotates your entire chart until your north node sits at 0 degrees Aries. So it's as if you could just pick up all the planets like that as a single piece and just tick, 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 rotate it around until your north node goes to 0 degrees Aries. Put it down, and that's your draconic chart. As I said before, if you haven't got your chart, go to astro.com and create it for free. When you have your tropical chart, you go back to the calculations page, and in the drop-down box where you see tropical, you select draconic. Hit calculate chart and you have your draconic chart. So once you've got your Draco chart, print that out as well and have them side by side, because that'll be the easiest way for us to look at what we're doing moving forward. Okay, so you've got your tropical chart on one side and you've got your Draco chart on the other side. Now what? Well, as a first step, I want you to lay those charts side by side and compare them. Now, the first thing you will notice is that all your planets and points remain in the same houses with the same aspects. They don't change. What does change, however, your planets and points will have more than likely changed signs, and the only exception to this is where your natal north node is already very close to 0 degrees Aries. So if you were born with your north node at 0 degrees Aries or 29 Pisces or 1 degree of Aries, whatever, there's a fairly good chance that your life purpose and your birth chart, well, there's a fairly good chance your life purpose and your birth chart are both the same. So you're living your life purpose, your life purpose, okay? But for anybody else, and sometimes it can only take a couple of degrees, the difference in your chart, and when it comes to the analysis and the synastry that we'll look at later, you'll understand the importance of shifting even just a couple of degrees. So I want to take a moment to remind you here really early that your draconic chart does not replace your tropical chart and is not an alternative to it. So don't look at it and go, oh, I was born with whatever moon and I don't like that moon and now I've got this moon that I really like. No, it's not like that. The draconic chart is a supplementary chart used to magnify and clarify themes of life or soul purpose, themes which may be hinted at in the tropical chart. And we'll talk about that more as we get into the analysis. So let's look at the draconic analysis in a nutshell. We'll begin with a simple step-by-step breakdown of the draconic analysis. Now grab both those charts, hopefully you've got them side by side, and follow along as we work through these next few sections. So the first thing you're going to do, and there's an awful lot of information in here, and it's only going to take me a few minutes to talk about it, but these are the points that I specifically want you to look for when you're looking at the difference between your tropical chart and your Draco chart. So first of all, note your chart structure. So the sign, elements, and modalities of each planet. Sorry, and by modality I mean cardinal, fixed, or mutable. Note also the house modalities, which is angular, succedent, cadent. This stuff becomes really important. Do any of your planets gain or lose dignity or detriment or exaltation or fall? That also is important. Do any elements increase, and importantly, do any vanish? Assess the chart shape. Noting the shape won't change from one chart to the other, but the different house and planetary placements could see significance in the chart shape. And by that I mean if you've got like a really powerful planet, really powerfully placed by sign and house in your tropical chart, but in your Draco chart, it moves into fall and falls into the 12th house, then that's going to put a real different spin on how you look at life purpose through your tropical chart. So what I've just said there is a lot of work, okay? And it's worth pausing on this or screenshotting this or whatever, taking a screenshot of this and just doing a really basic analysis of it first. So like I said, you want to look at planetary signs, elements, modalities, house modalities, angular, succedent, cadent, whether planets lose or gain dignity, detriment, fall, and exaltation, whether your elements increase or vanish, and assess the chart shape. Okay, I cannot overstate the importance of that step. Okay, next up, we're going to delineate the tropical chart if you've never delineated your tropical chart before. If you have, you can use this point for delineating your draconic chart. If you don't already know your tropical chart well, you will need to assess each planet by sign and house and by aspects they make to any other planets or points. Check for element and modality imbalances. Look for chart patterns or aspect patterns. Now, Draconic astrology is not an introductory astrology technique. It is far better if you have even just a basic, like some sort of decent hold on your tropical chart before you start trying to do a draconic analysis on it. Okay. So assuming that you do already have your tropical chart and you do have a fairly good handle on it, then you go about assessing your draconic chart in that exact same way. You look at planets by sign and house. You look by aspects they make to each other, and etc. etc. Because you know, if you've got your moon in, well, like for instance, I've got my tropical moon in Gemini, and my Draco moon is in Aquarius. So doesn't change that much because they're both air signs, but they do shift houses and they do make different aspects to natal planets. So we'll get into all of that in a minute, but the best thing to do is just to look at all of these things and just start to write lists, start to write little, bits and pieces. These are the elements, these are the modalities, these are the house placements. It's a good habit to get into anyway, just for when you're doing your regular tropical analysis. Now, once you've analysed your tropical chart and then your draconic chart, on both doing them separately, then you compare them. And at this point, I create a bi-wheel with my tropical chart in the center wheel and my Draco chart on the outer wheel. So what you'll have is all your house cusps will be your tropical house cusps, and your Draco chart will fall in whatever chart, sorry, in whatever houses they will naturally belong to within or in a synastry, I suppose, with your tropical chart. So if you haven't got access to astrological software to make that easy, then just hand draw it. And, by that I mean draw a circle, put in the 12 pieces of pie, put in your planets and your signs, and then on the inside for your normal chart, and then on the outside of that ring, draw in your Draco placements, because you'll still, when we get into the example that I'm going to show you, then you'll get an idea of how valuable that process can be. So the next step is what Victor Oliver calls a synastry of the soul. You are now, or a synastry of the self, sorry. You are now in a position to compare your ego/earthly chart with your soul chart. Excuse me. So when you've got that bi-wheel, I want you to note the tropical houses that your draconic placements fall into. Pay particular attention to the nodes where they've gone by house, the angles, and any planets leading planetary patterns. They're really important. Note which houses stelliums shift to. That's really important because that means a key focus. Because if you've got stellium, say if you've got a stellium in the 10th and that shifts to a stellium in the, I don't know, the 8th or the 12th or the 4th even, then the life purpose it has got a lot to say about what's happening with that 10th house stellium, which is very much an outward oriented, career oriented, public life oriented thing. Whereas if it shifts into a more personal or a more retreat oriented or a more emotional processing type of house, then it would suggest that there are elements of those houses that need to be processed and integrated before you can actually fully achieve what the 10th house is offering you. So once you've looked at the houses themselves, then look for conjunction squares and oppositions from your Draco planets to your tropical chart. Again, I'll explain that a little bit better when we get into the example. These dynamic aspects indicate tensions and challenges in living the life or soul purpose. Okay, so let's talk about interpreting your draconic chart. So there's a lot of information here, all right? You now have two different perspectives of yourself. You have your earthly perspective, which is your tropical chart, and your soul perspective, which is your Draco chart. You've put them on a bi-wheel and had a bit of a look at what that potentially could mean. Now, the challenge now is to synthesize these two charts in a way that harmonizes the journeys of yourself and your soul in a way that makes sense for you, while providing some clarity on your life purpose and your path to growth. And that's the goal of doing a draconic analysis for mine. The people who are looking for Draco charts are the sorts of people who ask, why am I here? What was I born for? What's my purpose in life? Is there any meaning to life? Those sorts of things. They're the type of things that people who do who want Draco readings are really after. And believe me, the answers are in there. So as you're going through and interpreting the charts, the most important thing to look for are themes that repeat, so recurring themes, particularly if they repeat or recur throughout the 3 stages. So something that shows in the tropical chart and maybe is repeated in a different way in the draconic chart. And then when you look at the bi-wheel, it comes up again. Okay, again, I'll explain that a little bit better because the best way to work through a draconic analysis is with an example. Enter my chart. So this is my tropical chart, my birth chart. Okay. So the first step we're going to do is analyze my tropical chart. And for the sake of brevity, this is going to be a very oversimplified, very basic way of looking at the tropical chart and the Draco chart, and then the comparison and then the synthesis. But it'll give you the ideas that I want you to take away, and it'll give you something that you can work towards with your own chart. So with my chart, I have a strong mix of cardinal and fixed and earth and air planets. So there's that Capricorn stellium, there's that Aquarian stellium. Okay. I have Capricorn, I've got planets, most of my planets are in angular and succedent houses. My North Node is in Leo in the 8th house, obviously ruled by my Sun in the 1st house. I only have one planet each in water and fire signs, and they're both generational. So, excuse me, Uranus in the anaretic degree of Leo and Neptune in Scorpio. All of my personal planets sit below the horizon. I count Mars as a below the horizon planet because it sits so close to my ascendant. It's literally 13 minutes from my ascendant. And my moon is in Gemini in the 6th house. So I am happiest and most comfortable when I'm communicating either by writing or speaking. I'm also something of an eternal student, signified by the trines to Mercury, Jupiter, and South Node, a configuration that suggests past life patterns and gifts. So a basic interpretation here is good communication skills, which is that Gemini moon and Mercury, Jupiter in Aquarius, with discipline, drive, leadership, and originality. That's my Capricorn Aquarius. With self-starting entrepreneurial style, 1st house, and preference for stability, 2nd and 8th house. So like I said, that is a necessarily basic interpretation, excuse me, of my natal chart. Now enter the Draconic chart. Now, as I said, all that has happened here is my wheel has been rotated until my 18-degree Leo node is now sitting at 0 degrees Aries. Okay, so everything will have changed sign, but nothing has changed house, and there are no different aspects. Okay, so this is the basic Draconic chart. But there is a lot of information in here that you need to gather to move forward. So let's look at it. Now, the first thing that jumps out with this chart is the emphasis of Virgo. There are 6 planets in Virgo. So everything from my Mars, ascendant, right through to my Mercury goes to Virgo. And they were spread across Capricorn and Aquarius before. Also of note is that water disappears completely from this. If you lose an element going from tropical to Draco, this could represent an area of struggle, and I can basically agree with that. This chart is heavily mutable, and I've got a greater emphasis on Earth, so it's very clearly a mutable Earth chart. So it is a Virgo signature chart. Now, this suggests a part of my life purpose is to be adaptable, flexible, and to develop practical communication skills. Okay. Now, 2 generational planets move to Aries, which suggests pioneering themes. The Draco moon moves to Aquarius, retaining its airy need for communication and connection. And the Draco moon's themes of originality, authenticity, and individuation add to my tropical Gemini's themes of communication. Now, a key part of my life purpose is to find my authentic voice and communicate original ideas by way of worthy work. That's the sixth house. Now, the reason I've isolated and talked about the moon specifically in both this and the previous analysis is because Draconic astrology is a moon-based chart. So the moon is of elevated importance. So always make sure that you give the moon your full attention. It may not be the most important planet in the chart, but it's a very important planet for the purposes of discovering life purpose. Now, this is also pretty interesting. Mars loses its exaltation as it goes from Capricorn to Virgo. Venus moves into fall, Jupiter into traditional detriment, while Mercury becomes dignified and becomes the chart ruler, further embedding the themes of communication. So I've got from the previous chart, remember at the very bottom, a basic interpretation here is good communication skills with discipline, drive, leadership, originality, self-starting entrepreneurial style and preference for stability. Excuse me. And here we see that some of the more powerful planets in my tropical chart lose that ease or power, I suppose, and they will ultimately lose their placement in the first house, but we'll get to that in a second. While Mercury doesn't just retain its power, it actually increases its power because it's dignified in Virgo, and in some sectors, Mercury is said to be exalted in Virgo, and it rules the ascendant of this chart. Okay, so we've looked at the tropical chart, we've looked at the draconic chart. Now, a quick note or reminder before comparing charts. Now, I cannot emphasize this enough. The draconic chart lays out a roadmap for growth potential. It's not an alternative to the tropical chart. Think of the planetary sign changes as new qualities to embrace or ways to operate. For example, if your tropical sun is in Pisces and your Draco sun is in Leo, you don't stop being a Pisces and suddenly become a Leo. Your Pisces characteristics are still the core of who you are. A Draco Leo sun may ask you to direct your innate Pisces characteristics such as compassion, mysticism, service, soul work, that sort of thing, through creative self-expression. So you get to add creative self-expression potentially to your Pisces energy. Similarly, if a Draco planet makes an aspect to a tropical planet, it doesn't change the way the tropical planet operates. Instead, it provides a deeper layer of analysis to help understand the evolutionary path and purpose of that tropical planet. And I'll talk about that a little bit more in a sec because I've got a couple of really standout conjunctions between my Draco chart and my tropical chart. Okay, so again, information overload. We're up to the comparison phase of mine, so comparing my tropical chart to my Draco chart. And this is the bi-wheel. So the inner part of the wheel, as you can see, is my natal chart, my tropical chart, and my Draco planets are placed in the outer wheel. So the first thing that you do, just look at them. Just look at them. You can glean a lot from an astrological chart just by looking at it. Because when you first just look at my tropical chart, the eye is naturally drawn to that first and second house, the two stelliums in the first and second house. So, of course, in the Draco chart, your eye is naturally drawn up to the 8th and 9th house because that's where they all go. The first and second go up to the 8th and 9th. So immediately you know that there is something to do with the life purpose that draws me not away from my first and second house to my 8th and 9th, but that adds to the first and second house energies. And there are ways to deepen and align and grow through potentially 8th and 9th house energies that I wouldn't have otherwise had if I'd not seen the Draco chart. So when you eyeball it, you see that my naturally angular and succedent chart, my tropical chart, becomes heavily cadent, okay? So that means that I've still got some angular planets. I've still got the moon, there's still Uranus and Neptune angular. Um, but Neptune and Venus, Sun, Saturn, Jupiter, and Mercury all move into cadent houses. Okay. So this further emphasizes the themes of learning and communication because that's what cadent houses are there to tell us. Okay. Your angular houses are you're self-starting, you're entrepreneurial, get out there and get stuff started, get it, the pioneering sort of energy, that more Aries sort of energy. Your succeedant houses are stability and management houses, and your cadent houses are your learning and communication houses. So this heavy emphasis on um, the cadent houses, um, like I said, it cements the learning and communication, and it in my chart, I think it kind of doubles down because I've got Gemini on the 6th and I've got Virgo on the 9th, and they're both ruled by Mercury, which is the planet of communication anyway. So these are the sort of things that you need to be looking for, the sort of repeating themes and recurring themes that you need to be looking for. Now, the North Node moves to the 3rd house, which again emphasizes a life purpose related to communication. And the Capricorn Aquarius planets now radiate out through the 9th house Virgo stellium, adding learning, communication, analysis, discrimination, and meaning life philosophy to the discipline, focus, and originality, authenticity of the tropical placements. Now, this is one of the big things where I said that this has been like the final piece of the puzzle for me. I used to be very much my way or the highway. I was very much my 1st and 2nd house Capricorn and Aquarius. But with the addition of that Virgo energy and understanding that Virgo energy and having my Sun and those other planets, but Capricorn and Aquarius radiating out through the Virgo energies, I get to add qualities such as humility, service, consideration of others, and discrimination. And it makes me a better leader. I'm still a leader because I've still got a 1st house Sun, okay? And it also made me a far more likable person, I would probably say. Okay, so there's 2 parts to this. So this is the continued version, the continued bit of analyzing the synastry of self. Now, again, the moon is very important in the Draco analysis. So look to where the moon has gone. The Draco moon has moved to the 1st house. And that helps me bring heart and objectivity, authenticity, Aquarius, to my self-starting tendencies. Okay. So that does give me a little bit, even though it's Aquarius, and Aquarius in the moon in Aquarius can naturally be very dissociated in a lot of ways. Like I said, objective, not heartfelt. At least there is that sense of there is some heart in there. But what the heart wants is the heart wants to create something or bring something into the world that has never been seen before, i.e. Aquarius. Now, when you look at where the the planets in the outer wheel sit, there's a couple of placements that are of particular note, okay? The most important conjunction, because it's the tightest, is the Sun, the Draco Sun at 9 degrees Virgo, sitting right on top of Draco Pluto at 9 degrees Virgo. Okay, so let's park that for a second. Look at Draco Neptune down here in the 6th house. It's sitting just over 2 degrees away from Tropical Moon. That's also of some importance. The Draco moon in Aquarius sitting in the middle of the Sun and Saturn. One of the things that I actually like about that is a Sun-Saturn conjunction, especially across Capricorn and Aquarius, can make me kind of again, that's also very much my way or the highway. So the moon wedging itself in there also gives me a little bit more step back. It doesn't always have to be my way. Think about everybody else. Think about the way this is going to land. I like that. And the other important conjunctions are the moon and ascendant up there at 0 degrees Virgo, and they might be out of sign, but they are actually the closest conjunctions. 0 degrees 7 of Virgo, 29:45 of Leo. That's what, 15 and 7, it's 22 minutes away, 22 and another 35 minutes away. So they're less than a degree. They're very, very tight. So the Mars and ascendant up there in the eighth house on that Uranus. And given the importance of the eighth house overall in my chart, after all, my North Node is there. My Sun rules it from the first house. That Mars and ascendant moving up there into the eighth house is also, for me, another sign that one of the reasons I'm really here is to do eighth house transformational type work. So they're the most important conjunction aspects. And I've given you tiny little interpretations here. The Draco Sun and Tropical Pluto adds enormous personal power. The Draco Neptune and Tropical Moon adding compassion and mysticism to the Moon's communication themes. Draco Moon between Tropical Sun and Saturn bringing an open heart to a stern Sun Saturn. And Draco Mars Ascendant and Tropical Uranus combustible bursts of creative self-expression. That's true too. Now, I don't have any notable oppositions that show up. Excuse me. But I do have a notable square, and that's from Draco Pluto down at 21 degrees Aries, squaring back to all of my Capricorn planets, basically. So the square from the Draco Pluto to the Capricorn planets is, to me, of great significance. Fourth house Draco Pluto in Aries suggests a life purpose involving breaking free from family or past conditioning, which challenges the tropical Capricorn's love of stability and legacy. So that's a part of my life purpose. That's a pretty big deal. The other thing that I found really interesting about this is that the Draco, Jupiter, and Mercury square my tropical moon. Now, I talked a little bit before about how my tropical moon trines my Mercury Jupiter. So see how that natal aspect has turned into a Draco square. Okay. So there's like clearly still communication themes are key. But the Draco square here adds the challenge of higher meaning, greater discrimination, and humility. They're all ninth house Virgo themes. To the tropical moon's love of speaking and writing on multiple topics. And that's one of the things it's very, very true for me. You know, I've always said if you give me a microphone, a stage, and a topic, I'm gold. Like I can talk about anything for hours. But my life purpose is to analyze, discriminate, do all the self-exploration, do all that Virgo stuff to find something that the heart of my Gemini moon can get into. That's the key to the soul purpose. Okay, so let's move on to the synthesis. Now, the synthesis is actually backtrack. So we've looked at the tropical chart on its own. We've looked at the draconic chart on its own. We've placed them side by side and just looked at them in terms of structure and modality and signs and elements and those sorts of things. And we've started to look at a synastry of self, as Victor Oliver calls it, where we're comparing the planets from one to the other and looking at different aspects that they're making to the other planets, what houses they're falling into, etc. The synthesis is the next step again, okay, where we take all the information, and there's a lot of information that we've gathered here. We take all that information that we've gathered and we try to make sense of it, I suppose. So for me, this is one of the best parts. A lot of people find this very daunting and they can find it very hard because you have gathered an awful lot of information. My suggestion is not to get too bogged down in individual points. If you need to, write lists, you know, and just start with each sign and each planet, and then each time it's mentioned as something in each of the charts, and just start that way, and houses, because you will start to see themes and recurring themes and recurring patterns pretty quickly. Like we've already seen a few, okay, particularly communication. So the key with this synthesis, as I said, is to look for repeating themes, repeating patterns, to allow the moon placements and the nodes of the moon to lead you. So don't lose sight. And I haven't actually talked much about the nodes yet, but that's because I don't really get into the nodes until I get into the synthesis. I've talked about the house change, but that's pretty much it because that's all you can do. Okay. So let's have a look at the synthesis. So again, I'm not going to go into too much detail here, but these are my key takeaways of the synthesis of my tropical and draconic charts. Now, there is a repeating theme of Sun, Pluto, eighth house. Okay. The two-way Pluto Sun aspects is a conjunction one way and a square the other way. The Sun rules my North Node in Leo in the eighth house. Remember, this is nodal astrology, and Pluto's natural affinity is with the eighth house. So there is a strong Sun, Pluto, eighth house repeating theme here. So I have repeating themes of self-expression, power, destiny, and the psyche, forming the fulcrum of my life purpose. I was born to transform myself and lead others down their own transformative path. And I very strongly believe that. Okay. The second thing that really stands out to me are the moon nodes, third house, ninth house. This has an overarching theme of communication, and this runs strongly through the analysis from all the previous slides. The tropical Gemini moon, the Draco third house, the Draco Mercury dignified ruling the chart and close to the midheaven, the heavy ninth house Draco emphasis, writing, teaching, speaking are all key in my life purpose. And this is like what to do, but where to do it, how to do it. I haven't gone into all of those things, but you can start to see how all this moves together. The fact that all that moves into Virgo and squares back to my natal moon or my tropical moon shows that the road won't always be smooth, but with Capricorn persistence, Virgo discernment, Gemini adaptability, and Aquarian ingenuity, I can get there. Okay, not to mention the power of Pluto and the creative self-expression of Leo. Okay. The other notable things about my chart was the shift of Capricorn Aquarius emphasis to Leo Virgo, and that adds passion and perfecting to achievement and ingenuity. And that's one of the first things you can do when you first look at your analysis. Come up with one or two keywords for each sign that you have placements in your tropical chart. Come up with one or two keywords for signs that your Draco chart throws up at you, and look at how they move. So like I said, I've got my sun, for instance, in Capricorn. So that Capricorn achievement goes to Virgo, perfecting. Okay. So it adds an element of perfecting. So, I always want to do things well. I always want to do them properly. It's not enough to achieve. It's not enough to reach the top. I've got to do it in the right way for me. Okay. And when you look at the shift from my Leo Virgo energies, which is where well, not my node, but Uranus and Neptune particularly, this gives my life purpose a pioneering edge because it moves to Aries. And, I must always strive to create something new. So you can make something out of those things alone, there's eighth house depth work, self-expression power, a sense of destiny associated with transforming myself. How I do that is told to me through other things in the chart, especially where the Draco Pluto falls. The communication theme is very, very powerful. So writing, speaking, teaching, what I've learned from my own individual path is going to be very important to me. But also through what I've gathered from other, like ninth house, other belief systems, other life philosophies, listening to other teachers, having mentors, all of that comes into it. But the guts of this comes down to the fact that, when you pull it back up to the tropical level, I've got Aquarius stuff there, plus my Draco moon's in Aquarius. So there is a need in me to create something that has never been seen before. That gives my life a great sense of meaning. So, like I said, hopefully you can look back through that and see how to potentially start to do a Draco analysis on your own chart. So that brings today's video to an end. It's been a bit longer than I thought it was going to be. If it's all been a bit much for you, but you're really interested, you can book a Draconic chart reading with me at suzanneharrison.co/workwithme. You need to select the Seize the Dragon's Tail reading. That's the Draconic reading. And just before we go, if you haven't downloaded your copy of Permanent Wellbeing yet, which is my guide to living your best life with astrology,